Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Russell Hobbs Show in the Big Picture. I have a very special guest today and friend in the studio, Keenan L. Williams. How you doing, Keenan?
Doing wonderful, Russell. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you, man.
Did you have to put the L in there? Was that necessary?
I like Keenan.
Asking for a friend.
I like Keenan L. Williams. That L's important. It's part of your name.
You're right.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about the big picture and history past, present, future. And Keenan is a man that is writing history. So Keenan, I want to ask you, I want our audience to get to know you. Tell me about, where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
I grew up in Grand Prairie, Texas, not far from here. And I lived on the Tarrant County side of Grand Prairie, a little community called Dalworth. And but I went to school in Arlington because during that time they were still integrating. And so there were 4 streets in my community that were zoned for Arlington schools. So I grew up in the hood, but I went to school in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm from here. I'm familiar with that area.
Yeah. It was, I grew up in the hood, but I went to school in the neighborhood. And so I had that opportunity to see both worlds and learn how to operate in both worlds. Here in home is, there was poverty, there was crime, there were things that went on that really create toxicity within you as you continue to see it and hear it. And it almost convinces you that that's who you are. And, it's almost like the menu. I tell people, they say, well, you have choices wherever you are. And I try to explain, sure, that that's a steakhouse, but you don't know the sides until someone hands you the menu. And sometimes in life, in those places, a lot of people hadn't received the menu. They just know that they're here. They know that this is America, but no one has presented the menu for certain reasons. But my household, my father was a very hard worker. I commend him for that. He taught me how to work, to be a good provider. The other side was he was a horrible father in an aspect, and he was a worse husband, right? He was a good father because he taught me how to provide, and he gave us everything that we wanted. But he had an anger problem. He was very small, so he had what I call the Napoleon complex, right?
Right.
And so he and my mother, my household had a lot of toxicity in it, arguments, the fights, and I had to listen to that as a child growing up. The dysfunction in some of those communities was very prevalent and very normal. So what you may call, or some people would call abnormal, became normal. And, I remember at 9 years old, I was always an aggressive kid. So fighting was like something I did. I loved to fight. I loved that aggression, and I remember, beating the kids up next door, and they talked about going to get their cousins. That's what kids do. I'm going to go get my cousin. I'm going to go get my, 9 years old. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand an example of the mentality of the household. And my father came to me because he heard them talking, and he gave me a .44 Magnum and set me on the stairs and said, when they come up the stairs, I want you to shoot them. And at 9 years old, I sat on a stairway waiting for kids to come up so that I could shoot them.
So 9
to him,
years
he
old.
Thought he was right. I was 9 years old.
Yeah, it was survival.
To him, he thought he was doing the right thing.
So 9 years old, you're sitting on the porch
9 years old
with a .44, and the people that were going to be coming, that he said shoot them, they were other kids your age?
They were other kids, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The cousins were older, and so he's shoot them when they come up the stairs. And that's what I would have done if they would have come up the stairs. But it was by God's grace that he covered that ignorance, and they never made it up the stairs. Then I got into football. That aggression, my dad put me in football. He was great at that. Put me in football, never missed a game, never missed practice. And so football became the way out of the hood. Here's the reality. In the hood being where most of the black people lived, right? The the way out of that place, that poverty, that mentality, that situation, that circumstance that you didn't ask for was sports or entertainment. Because no one else ever talked about the importance of the education. No one ever talked about you can be a congressman, a senator, a city councilman, a police officer, a fireman. Even the police officers were not friends. They were the enemies in the community. Does that make sense? So football was my way out. And I grew up and I was very, very good in football because I was aggressive, and it was actually healthy for me to be able to be aggressive, physical, and do it without getting in trouble. But my senior year, I was a preseason blue chipper. I had tons of scholarships, coaches calling, schools calling, letters every day I'm picking up from there. And my first game, the very first game of my senior year, I had like 5 colleges there. Oklahoma University was there to watch me, Texas, El Paso State. There was like 5 colleges that were there scouting me, filming. And I got hurt the first game, and I tore my ACL. So Back then, tearing your ACL was like permanent damage, This is in 86. So tear my ACL. I went to the hospital. I'm sitting in the hospital. My friends come, and I was very popular in school. I was actually voted the most likely to succeed in school because I had a personality, I was still laughing and smiling and fun. And
so you were the cool running back football star that everybody liked at school. You were funny. You were friendly.
I had a lot of, I had tons of, I didn't drink. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do any of that. Yeah. It was a good place for me. But when I got hurt and I'm in the hospital, the first day I realized my parents didn't show up. And the second day they didn't show up. And then the third day they didn't show up. My friends kept coming. And the last day one day the doctor walks in and he says, "Hey, you need to know your football career is over. You can never play football again. ACL, we fixed it, but you can never do that again." So I'm 17 years old and my dream has been shattered. My parents are not there to support me. My friends take me home to my house in Grand Prairie. Get to the house, the lights are off. It's daytime, so there's no lights on. And there's nobody at the house, but the door's open, so I walk in. They put me on the couch and prop my leg up a little bit. A few minutes later, actually, my mother runs into the house. She comes in. She says, "Son, I'm sorry I didn't visit you. I have to grab my clothes and leave. Your father and I are getting a divorce, and I'm afraid he might hurt me." And I'm 17 years old.
That's sad. That's big.
My dream of what a future looked like was shattered. The only one I knew. And the family structure, even though it was dysfunctional, it was still a family, was torn apart as well, all at the same time. And I'm lying there and I'm saying, what do? I didn't know God. I had never read a Bible. I didn't have my hero growing up, as you know, I'm very big on show me your hero, I'll show you your future.
Right.
Well, who was my hero? My hero was football players. And
wait, which football player?
I had a few that I really liked.
Barry Sanders.
Of course,
Emmett
Barry Sanders.
Smith.
And Emmett was, I was older when Emmett came around, but, the Jim Browns and the Tony Dorsett and the Roger Staubachs and those guys and Fran Tarkington and all those guys, right? And my favorite coach was Bum Phillips because I liked his, and he became my mentor, actually, it's been like 20 years ago, he became one of my mentors. So anyway, I get, my mom tells me that and I'm totally distraught. And, school's going on and I'm not going to school. Nobody's at the house. It's just my brother and I, and we're trying to figure out how to live. Of course, my dad was still providing, and so there's 2 weeks left and I dropped out of high school. Because, when I leave out of my house, to the right are the drug dealers. And then you go to the left are the gang members. And so when I would go to the left, the gang members told me, "Hey, we're family. We got you." They all knew I played football. They also knew I was very aggressive, and they knew I was a leader. And "We got you, your family." And so I quit high school with 2 weeks left and joined the gang.
Mostly because you didn't have your family unit, your mom and
dad. That became my family unit.
Yeah.
The gang was my family. And it was the family that I had to get to know. And so, I got in the gang in 1986, quit high school, 2 weeks left. I hit the streets very hard. And in 1987, I started selling crack cocaine. And what's really, really ironic, Russell, is when I joined the gang, I went and bought a gun. And the first gun that I bought was a 44 Magnum. Yeah. Clean and Sue Special. because that's what my father gave me. So that's what I knew. Bought the gun, and I started just being a very, very aggressive, bad acting person in the streets. I was frustrated. I was hurt. I was angry. I didn't ask to be a gang member. I wanted to play professional football, you know? And by 1987, selling crack cocaine, I actually started doing cocaine. And then I started drinking, doing cocaine, got hooked on cocaine. So from 86 to 93, hooked on cocaine. I was shot 6 times from 86 to 93 on 2 different occasions. And, you know, being shot 6 times, I was shot so many times because I started robbing drug houses. You know, I got hooked on cocaine and I was like, okay, I need money, I need drugs. So I robbed drug houses. You know, and I tell people all the time when I say I went to prison for robbery and I was robbing. I didn't rob regular people though. No, you got to understand that. I only robbed drug dealers. So I still had a little ethics about my robbing skills. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you a specific question on that.
Yeah.
So when you say I just robbed the drug dealers, it sounds like one thing, but in real life, it probably worked out something like this. You knew that drug dealer.
Right. I knew. Yes.
That's old Clyde.
Yes.
Clyde owes me. I don't like Clyde's attitude. I'm going to go take Clyde down. It's more like that, right?
It was some of it was that, and then other was I'd go buy drugs and I'd see where the drugs were and the drug, you know, where they had guns and everything, and then I'd go rob them. You know, hopeless people make hopeless decisions. People sit on the outside and they say, "Oh, I would never do that." You can never criticize what you've never been through and that you don't understand, and so. You know, I was shot 6 times, and then by 1989, I was homeless. So I started sleeping in vacant houses, no lights, no gas, no water, on the streets of West Dallas. You know, hadn't had showers and would take showers in months at a time. Periodically going to the Salvation Army, sleeping there at night. You know, the guy on the corner. I was that guy on the corner that didn't have a haircut, that needed to shave, that hadn't brushed his teeth. You know, I was that guy. And, you know, Russell, one of the things that really impacted me when I was there on those streets and I was homeless, because even though I was in that position, that's not where my heart was. I was still crying and hurting on the inside, saying, God, why me? You know, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening? Why does this have to happen? I didn't ask for this. I was like you, man. I raised my hand in the 3rd grade and said, I want to be a professional football player. I didn't raise my hand and say, I want to get shot 6 times. And between 86 and 93, I was also arrested over 45 times. You know, in and out of jail, getting shot, homeless, drugs, alcohol, two rehabilitation facilities.
You really, it just boils down to you had no hope, no no direction.
At all.
No hope, no vision.
Hopeless people make hopeless decisions every day.
That's right.
And I needed some hope, you know, and one of the things that I love about the Bible says faith worketh by hope. Without hope, there's no faith to work, right? So my faith was inactive because I had no hope. And, you know, by 1993, I had a lot of charges. I had aggravated robbery, deadly weapon, bodily injury, unlawfully carrying a weapon, unauthorized use for motor vehicle, terroristic threats, forgery charges. And in 1993, they had I had all these charges, and I knew I was getting ready to go to prison for a long time. And so they were looking for me adamantly. The police were. And so they were harassing my family and staking the houses out, looking for me because I was a bad actor. I was doing wrong things. And so I asked my grandmother for the phone number of the detective who had kept coming around. His name was Alan Patton. And so I got the phone number. I was hiding out in Denton, Texas, and I called him. And I said, I'm Keenan Williams. I know you're looking for me. He said, yes, we are. He says, I want you to know that we know that you carry a gun, and we know that you're armed, and we are prepared to do whatever it takes to bring you in, wherever that looks like. And I understood what he was saying. I said, well, you know, I would like 24 hours to spend with my family. And if you'd give me that, I'll turn myself in. And he says, you know, I've never done this and I don't know why I'm doing it. But I'll give you 24 hours. He said, I promise you that no one will touch you for 24 hours. But after that, if you're not here, we're coming. And I said, I will do it. So at that point, there's a white police officer chasing me, a black man, but I didn't feel like he was chasing me because I was black. I knew he was chasing me because I was committing a crime. He didn't show a personal vendetta or that racist mentality that people talk about. I understood he was doing his job. Went to my grandmother's. I saw police. They were on the side of the house. They had dogs. They were parked all up and down. They looked at me. I looked at them. No one touched me. I spent time with my family. The next day I went and turned myself in. So I eventually got, once I turned myself in, I ended up with 6 years aggravated time for prison. So I hit prison with a 6-year sentence. And when I hit prison, I was already a gang member. So they tagged me as a gang member and they put me on the form with the other gang members. And so when I got there for the first 4 years, man, I was rock and rolling. I'm fighting. I'm angry. I'm frustrated, I was doing what I was expected to do, in the condition that I was in. But there was something happening and maybe it's because I had time to think and to be away from the drugs, even though I was in the gang activity there. People were coming in with Mike Barber Ministries and Bill Glass Ministries. And they talking about this Jesus thing and, all that stuff, and I'm like, man, if Jesus loved me so much, why didn't he save me, And so when they would talk about it, all I could think about was when I would be on the corner sometime in West Dallas or South Dallas or somewhere. And I knew it was Sundays because people had nice clothes on and the hats, and they were dressed very nicely and they were in their nicest cars and they were cleaned up. And I'm standing on the corner, Russell, and it's impacted me so much that I said I would never become a Christian. They used to lock the door on me. Mm. The ones that locked the door out of fear, I could understand because they never really looked at me. They just locked the door and I could hear that door locking. It was the ones that locked it and they would look at me up and down and they would talk through the window, get a job, get your life together, get off of the drugs, go home, do something with yourself. That hurt me because that's not what I asked for in my life. Does that make sense?
It really does.
So I didn't like Christians. I said I would never become a Christian. I hated Christian people because they seemed like to be the ones to really criticize, critique, and condemn me the most, And so I didn't like the ministry people coming in, but they kept coming, man. And one day there's a riot. And so the riot goes on and I get locked down in Ad Seg by myself because they want to know they lock the gang leaders up. They want to know what's going on. Is it over? Figure out who, because people get stabbed in riots and they want to make sure that everything's over. And so I'm in there for a few days and I started having a conversation with God. And I was angry and I had a great conversation with him. It was really cool, right? Because he didn't talk back to me or talk down on me and I didn't feel a certain way. But right before that, I'm sorry, I didn't put this in. This is important. About a month before the riot, I joined the Muslim faith. So God was tugging on me, because I appreciated the discipline I saw with the Muslims. And it's almost like they reminded me of the gang, but it was a gang with discipline, And I appreciated how they held their Qurans and how they respected the Quran. I was like, I like that, So I changed my name. I wrote a letter to change my name in the courts to Ishmael Akhtar Ibrahim to become a Muslim.
Well, I think what you saw there that was appealing is they had some sort of plan or sophistication. They just weren't wild and crazy.
They had some discipline. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of respect for God, and I like that. So I'm in this cell, man, and I'm talking to God. And then the next day I did it again. And I didn't know anything about a sinner's prayer. I had never read a Bible in my life. So I'm talking to God and I say, whatever I need to do to be better for you, then I'm okay with that. And if doing the Jesus thing is what I need to do, I'm okay with that too. I didn't know I was asking him into my life. And the power of God hits me in this cell by myself. I had never read a Bible. He hits me. I remember looking at my arm and I saw goosebumps popping up. And it took over so strongly. I got baptized, filled with the Holy Spirit. I'm speaking in tongues and I'm running around the cell like a madman. because something has invaded me and it's controlling me and I can't control it. All I know is something is going on and I'm yelling and I'm screaming and I don't even know what I'm saying. But he took over. And the guards were at the door because they thought I had lost my mind, you know?
You surrendered.
I surrendered without knowing the prayer and all that. It was from the heart, you know?
It was a real surrender prayer.
It was real because he's a real God.
I'll do whatever you want. And he took your life over by his Spirit.
Invaded me. And the guards were at the door with the shields and the sticks because they thought I had lost my mind in there, because people lose their minds in ad seg. And I saw it, and all I could say to them is, I'm okay. Jesus is real. He's in me. Jesus is real. Jesus is real. God is doing, you know, and they understood something had happened to me. So that was 4 years in the prison. And so when I got out of the cell, I quit the gang. I cut off everything that I was doing crazy. I started reading the Bible. For the next 2 years, I read 248 books. And the reason I was reading so much is because as I began to read the Bible, I hit Romans 12:2 that said, be not conformed, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind so you can prove what is the good and acceptable will of God. I said, man, God, I don't want to be just a little regular Christian. I want to prove that you're in me and your will is working through me. And he said, study. In 2 Timothy 2:15, when Paul told him, says, Timothy, study to show yourself approved, a workman that needs not to be ashamed. So I was reading all these things about studying, man. And you know, I would open the Bible and I would look for a place, or I would look for something in there that was talking about me. So I took it personal, you know, and I went back into the book of Genesis now let me go to Exodus. I went and I started reading about Moses. So Moses is the first cat that I caught on to, like, man, I get that, you know, because Moses was born a Hebrew, poor, but he was raised Egyptian. So he was too much of a Hebrew to be an Egyptian, but he's too much of an Egyptian to ever be a Hebrew.
It's like the hood and the neighborhood for you.
That's it. It was like I was because I knew how to move fluently with all white people.
Not only
and
that.
I was never threatened. I felt good. It was normal for me.
Not only that, but Moses is the one who murdered the dude.
Yes.
With his strength.
I saw all of that. I saw me in that, you know, and I saw the wilderness as my prison. And I said, oh my God, you used Moses and he murdered a man. And the thing that really pressed me to read also was I understood that Moses was educated. So I said, God, I don't want to be a normal Christian. I want to be one that has the capacity to be used whichever way you want me to be used. So that's what pushed me into reading so many books. And I started writing the warden to get in school, because they don't let you in school when you're a gang member. I wrote over 150 letters to the warden. They wouldn't let me in school. And one day, Russell, I saw the warden walking by, and he has guards. The warden in prison, the warden is like the president, right? And he's walking by, and I saw him. And man, I start going around. God said, I got to get to him. I knew that was my opportunity, right? And the guards are like, Williams, get back in line. What are you doing? I'm like, I got to talk to Warden Jones. I got to talk to him. You better get in line. And man, I'm getting up to the warden, and I get real close, and he looks around. I said, Warden Jones. He turns and he looks at me. He says, Williams, I know who you are. If you don't write me any more letters, I'll let you in school. I said, yes, sir. That's all I wanted. That taught me persistence.
That's a deal. Yes.
Hey, man, that taught me that if I wanted something bad enough in life, regardless of my environment, I could have it. It taught me excellence, because excellence demands a door when there is no door. I decided to take on the character of excellence. I changed the way I was walking. I changed the way I was talking. I learned how to walk from Solomon. Because remember, I come from the streets. So I had that cool Huggy Bear walk, you know. Richard Pryor, all that stuff, right?
I got it. Hey,
that dip in the hip.
You know when you were driving, it was the gangster lean.
Oh man, I was leaning, right? And so I said, okay, if I'm going to do something different, I have to be different. I said, God, I want to change my walk, because I'm reading, he's talking about me being a king and an ambassador. So I read about Solomon. I didn't even know this was happening when I'm reading. And it says Solomon walks into the temple, and the Queen of Sheba sees him and faints. I said, I want to walk like that dude right there. If he can walk like that and a woman faints from that walk, I said, God, teach me how to walk like Solomon. So, man, I started training on my walk. I started watching how I was eating at the table. I read about Joseph, who went from the prison to the palace. I grabbed Joseph in the Bible and I put myself in there. And I said, if Joseph can go from the prison to the palace, so can I. 1996, in prison, crackhead, no friends, aggravated robbery, everything in the world working against me. I made a statement to the guys at the church and I said, I'm going to the White House. If Joseph can go from the prison to the palace, I can go from the prison to the White House. And they all laughed at me because my environment was not conducive to the dream that God gave me. But when I looked at that, Russell, not only did I think about doing that, but I started looking to understand what the protocol of that, what that looked like. And I started putting a plan in place. See, most people miss the story about Joseph. The most important thing that with me with Joseph was the Bible said he cut his beard. And so when I saw that, I said to myself, what am I willing to cut out of my life to go from the prison to the palace? What am I willing to change? Because, and Joseph cut it, remember, to the Hebrews, the beard symbolized wisdom. It was important to the Hebrews, right? But to the Egyptians, it was offensive. It taught me that the protocol of the next level is different from the one that you're on. So I started changing those things that would take me to that level. I'm going to speed through the prison thing because I want to come out of that, and we want to get to the after prison. So I started reading about Abraham Lincoln, who became my hero. Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 45 minutes to chop down a tree, I spend the first 30 minutes sharpening my axe. And so I said, right now, it's time to sharpen my axe. So I learned preparation. I started believing that when preparation meets opportunity, it becomes a formula for success. I didn't want to have an opportunity without being prepared. That's why most people fail. It's not they don't have the opportunity, it's that they're unprepared when opportunity presents itself.
What jumps out to me is that growing up, my life was similar because you grow up in the suburbs or the hood, and your parents don't really teach you how to live right.
They're still being they're just kids growing up themselves.
They are, and so it's rare that parents really have the wisdom to impart to their children.
Right.
Most of the times in our lives they didn't, and so you grow up and you don't really have much direction. It's a crazy world. You fall into all the pitfalls. But at this point in your life, you had met the King of the universe, and you had the plan. You had the book now. So you have a role model.
The book gave me a plan.
And your identity's changing.
Yes. Russell, that's key right there.
And you've got a vision.
Russell, that's the key right there. I haven't had a drink or drug since 1993. 30 years. I never took 12 steps. I didn't do any books. I didn't do anything. My identity changed. Because when I read that old things have passed away, behold, all things become new, I literally believed that. When I started reading about you're a new creature created in Christ Jesus, I took on the new creature. And you know what, Russell? I never had a desire from that point to do anything different because that wasn't who I was anymore.
Exactly.
And so prison prepared me. I ran, I studied 248 books in 2 years. I went back to school. I got in college. I took a degree in college in the last 2 years, air conditioning, refrigeration. I would in school, even though you're in college, you still work while you're in prison. And I would stay after work when all the guys would get back to go to the rec yard and play dominoes and drink coffee. And I would stay and I would put all the tools up and I would clean them off. And I did that because I read in the book that employees spend 50% of their time looking for something that's not where it's supposed to be. So I said, integrity here is the same integrity there. I started preparing myself not just to be an employee, but to be an employer. I decided if you don't hire me, I'll hire you. You don't have to give me a job. I'll start creating jobs.
You know what?
Start believing in me.
What that moment reminds me of is in Revelation, it talks about the 7 spirits of God.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing you sharing as part of your testimony is once you receive the Spirit and you had this vision and your identity is changing, all of a sudden you have the spirit of excellence, spirit of discipline.
Yes.
Your whole being is now transformed.
A whole new person.
Yes.
Listen, whole new person. So after prison, I get out and I'm prepared. And that next day, there were challenges when I got out. The person who picked me up had marijuana in the car and a 5th of Remy Martin and said, we're going to go get some girls. I'm like, dude, I don't live that way anymore. She's like, what are you talking about? You've been in prison 6 years. I'm like, that's not who I am. He takes me to Houston, Texas, There's people selling drugs everywhere. There's guns. I'm sitting in a truck with my hands on the car, crying and sweating because he took the keys. He thought I was getting out because all I could visualize is the police pulling up, and I want to make sure they know I didn't stash that stuff under the seat, you know? I've been in prison 6 years. He finally comes back to the truck and says, man, you serious? I said, yes, please just take me home. He takes me home. I get there, my mother's there. I go to her house. Right before I come home, I took a phone book in prison for Arlington because you can get phone books and all kinds of stuff, right? And I mapped out 10 places around her house, air conditioning places that I would go to when I got out to get a job. So the next morning, I woke up 4 o'clock just like in prison. I don't know why they wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning to eat breakfast. What the heck? Who wakes up at 4 to eat breakfast?
You know what? If I was running
that's
the prison,
crazy.
If I was the warden, I'd let everybody sleep late. You know,
yes.
I don't want to deal with it.
You wake up at 4 o'clock. But you know what I started doing, Russell? I said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. They're waking me up for no reason, but I'm going to get up for a reason. Mm-hmm. If I get up at 4 o'clock in prison, when I get out and I get up at 4, I'm working by 5. Other people start at 9. I've got a 4-hour jump on the rest of the world. So that's the mentality I took on. I took every situation and flipped it to my advantage, how to utilize it. Next day I get up, man, I'm ready. I do my push-ups. I'm ready. My mom walks in. She says, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to get a job. She says, 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, I know. I said, it's okay. I said, Mom, I'm fine. She said, okay, well, that's fine. I'll take you. Just let, 7, 8 o'clock come around when people start. I said, no. I don't need you to take me. I've been waiting on 6 years for this opportunity. I know everywhere I'm going. I got it all mapped out here. I'm going here on Arkansas Lane, DSP air conditioning first. I go there, it's about 5:30. And it's dark, man, right? And I'm buff because I've been in prison in the fields for 6 years, This little white guy walks around the corner and it's dark. And here's this big black guy. And I scared the crap out of him. I said, sir, it's okay. I'm just here to get a job, right? He says, well, young man, you scared me. It's 5:30 in the morning. He says, well, we're hiring, but my secretary comes in at 8 and, you can fill out an application at 9. I said, no, I'm going to wait right here because I learned that first impressions could last throughout the day and I don't want anyone to ruin my opportunity to work for you. And he looks at me like, this dude is different, right?
This dude's overqualified.
He's like, this guy's different. So he comes out and gets me. He says, give me a few minutes. He comes out and gets me. He takes me and sits me, and I said, first thing you need to know is I just got out of prison. But there's no one that you have that can outwork me, has more integrity, more loyalty, that can benefit your company more than I. I said a few things to him. He's looking at me. At 6 o'clock that morning, we're talking about 20 minutes later, I was working on the first crew because I was qualified. But here's the powerful thing that sold him. I believed in me. And he understood if I let this guy leave my office and he goes across the street, he's going to become my competitor, and he didn't want that. He brings me in 30 days later. I'm staying after work like I did in prison, cleaning the tools. I take the vans and I back them all up to the doors. He asks me why. I tell him why, so we can be efficient, economical, and the most powerful company in Arlington, right? He's like, man, this dude is different. Because all the other guys leave work to go get a drink. I didn't drink. 30 days later, I was running my own crew. 60 days later, I was running all of the crews. 90 days later, he pulls me in his office. He teaches me the office. He starts taking me to meetings with him and says, I think you'll be good in meetings because everyone likes you, right? You laugh, but you're disciplined. He takes me to meetings. I start landing contracts for him. 6 months after working for him, I broke off and I started my own company. I walked into a warehouse. I saw some guys unloading. I just saw a system that was faster than what they were doing. And I started understanding that warehousing is about shipping and receiving because each square foot you get paid every time another product hits it, you get paid, right? So you want to get it on and get it off. And I told the owner, I said, look, if this guy would pull this, change the tie up, teach him how to read what he brings in, take your guy, how much you paying? He paying $48,000 a year. Pull him to the back so he can get ready for shipping. I said, that'd expedite everything. He says, you think that can work? By the way, the warehouse, I was visiting my dad. So I'm talking to my dad and I see this, right? And my dad's like, that might work. Let me get Curtis, the owner. He gives me an opportunity to do it. I had never done this in my life, Russell. I was faster than all the other guys that he had there. He hires me, brings me in as a contractor. I set up my LLC. I took on one door, and the logistics was so fast of the shipping and receiving with the formula. I took over all the doors. With my first year, I hired over 48 employees to work for me. I went from one warehouse to 5 warehouses. I took one warehouse, Quincy, first guy worked for me. Took him, I trusted him. I used to let him collect checks and money. I watched his integrity. He didn't know I was calling the companies behind his back to find out how much they were paying in cash and checks, right? And he was always honest. God tells me to give Quincy 60% of my company so that I could grow. I said, Satan, you're a liar. The truth is not in you. Right? I'm like, there's no way I'm supposed to give a guy 60%. So I'm like, man, it makes sense. So I think about it. I talked to him. I said, hey, look, I'm thinking about giving you 60% of the contract, but you would run it as your own. And he says, I like that. I said, you would go from making $1,000 a week to about $4,000 a week. So what am I doing? I'm benefiting his company.
And you're spreading yourself now where you can have many more. So what was your next venture then?
Well, I went around the corner. I gave him 40%. I gave him 60. I walked away with 40. I went around the corner to AMC, to FWB company who were taking in mosque shrimp loads. I walked in, talked to one of the supervisors, said, hey, can I look to see what you guys are doing? I told them a formula that I could expedite it there. They gave me the opportunity. I had them call the other warehouse and they told them how good I was. I took over that warehouse. So I gave up 60%, walked away with 40, went around the corner and got another 100. So now I'm at 140 because I gave up 60. I did that 5 times. So by 2004, I'm making a few $1 million a year and I'm only working 5 hours a week. I spend 1 hour at each warehouse collecting, saying hi, and collecting a check, keeping the relationship going.
So at that point, were you already into starting to do public speaking? And
I was starting to move into that, and I sort of moved a little fast there. But this is an important fact. In 2001, I actually got engaged to a judge. One of the guys that was a DEA agent that came in to bust one of the places that I worked. He was an undercover. He and I became friends, and he invited me out to a picnic. And I go to the picnic, and there's nothing but judges and prosecutors and police officers there. And me and the judge, we just sort of started eyeing each other. We're talking, and we started dating. But right before that, I go down to Grand Prairie to the police station, and I asked for Alan Patton because, man, he was on my heart all those years, right? Because I realized it was just his job. So I asked him to come out, and they brought him out, and there's people everywhere. And so I raised my hand so he knew it was me. And he's walking over, and he's walking over. And then I start seeing him slow down a little bit. I said, oh, he recognizes me. So I stuck my hand out, symbolized 90-degree angle. I learned it in school, symbolizing friendship. He comes up, he grabs my hand, he's shaking my hand. He says, don't I know you? I said, yeah, I'm Keenan Williams. You sent me to prison 8 years ago. His heart starts beating in my hand. He doesn't know what I'm about to do. I said, but I'm here to thank you because what you did changed my life. He breaks down in tears in the middle of the police station. Now I'm breaking down in tears because I don't know why he's crying. He's hugging me. He's crying. He says, I got to show you something. He takes me upstairs. I'm walking through the police station for the first time with no handcuffs on. And I'm seeing all these police officers that had arrested me. And they're looking at me, right? And I'm looking at them, but I'm feeling great.
it's like a reunion.
It's like a reunion, man, And he sets me into his computer. He opens his computer up. He was writing his resignation. He said, I was about to resign because I didn't think the job I did, anyone cared about it. That was in 2001. Alan didn't retire until 2016. That moment gave him 15 more years as a detective.
Wow, I love the way
and he became my best friend. He's one of my best friends now.
At that moment, though, you walk up, hey, you put me in prison 8 years ago. He doesn't know if you're ready to fight.
He doesn't know.
But you're actually there to say thank you.
Yes.
You helped give me a new life.
Changed my life, yes. And so, I started actually with the judge. She and I, her name's Alicia, I had a gift to speak because I was preaching, but I didn't really like the setup. I wanted more freedom to be me, to be who I've been called to be. I wanted to hit the streets. And so I started speaking. I started talking to people. And then she would, get me engagements at juveniles and then take me to the jails. And then we'd go to high schools together. So here it is, an ex-convict and a judge are engaged, and people are blown away at that, And so we shared our testimony and we talked about God and the different steps, And so I opened up companies. That was in 2001. That didn't work out. We're still friends though. Later, I moved into speaking even more. And then by 2013 or 14, I really started doing a lot with police officers. I started training police officers. I started training wardens. Someone heard me speak and got me down with the police station. I started training officers as they come through the academy. Then I went and did a conference down in Galveston for all of the wardens and the majors and all of the heads of parole for the state of Texas. And I was the speaker. And guess who was there? My warden was there. And I saw him. And afterwards, he just walks up to me and says, "I'm so proud of you." And he starts crying and he gives me a hug and I start crying. I'm hugging him, So it was really cool. That's beautiful. So I'm a businessman at the time. Now I've become a motivational speaker. And then I moved into politics. Didn't mean to move into politics, but I started learning some things that were very, very important to me about America. I started seeing the truth about America. I'm like, whoa, Paul Revere said that the British are coming, And then I read about this guy, Wentworth Cheswell, who was a black man that went the other way saying the British are coming. And I said, wait, hold on. Now, why didn't I know that there was a man named Wentworth Cheswell in 1768? 1768, the first black judge was elected in the United States of America. And when I saw that, Russell, I said to myself, if I had read about a Wentworth Cheswell, a Frederick Douglass, who was once a slave and 5 years later, he's standing in front of the president of the United States, telling him about the ins and outs of slavery and counseling Abraham Lincoln. If I had read about that, I would have become the very first black president of the United States of America. Because when I jumped into the political side of life, it sparked something in me. It made me go deeper. It made me want to do more research. It made me want to understand more about the truth of America, how being in the South, we're in the South, so the history was written by the losers. Losers would never write history for you to win because they didn't win.
Yeah, so let me focus on your point there. You're saying that growing up as a teenager, your whole identity, just to recap here and bring us this way, your identity was football player, really.
That's it.
That
yes.
was your,
because that's all I knew.
Well, that was your gift and your power and your personality, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And you had a purpose to win the games and all. So you're saying, though, if educational-wise, if you would have known American history.
It would have changed my life.
Yeah, American history like Frederick Douglass.
Wentworth Cheswell, Benjamin Banneker.
Then you might have picked a role model there and had a purpose.
I would have had a different hero.
To avoid prison.
Because it would have created a vision, a picture of me of who I could have become.
That's right. Because your dad really wasn't your hero, even though you loved him.
He's my hero now. Well, he's passed away now. He became my hero later.
But
when he got saved.
You didn't really have a role model. That's
I didn't have a role model. I needed a role model.
Yeah.
So now, it's so important that we understand the truth about America and how great America is. When you hear these stories and you find these things out and you learn that Benjamin Banneker was a black man that actually laid out the plans for the White House that we see right now, because the first one was burned down. When I read about George Washington all through school, and I'm looking at George Washington, man, and I'm like, whoa, okay, hold on. Something's wrong here. Because I began to read and study, and I learned about Prince Whipple and Prince Esteban and James Armstead. James Armstead was the very first double spy in America. He was a black man. He was the very first double spy. Crispus Attucks was the first person to die on American soil for the American Revolution, and he was a black man. If I had known these things, things would have happened earlier. Russell, when we sat down, kids, black, white, and brown, and you tell the truth about history, right?
Yes.
The truth.
Yes.
You're going to alleviate superiority and inferiority. Now everyone feels as though they belong and this is our country. See, man, I'm real big on this. I'm not an African American. I don't know anything about Africa. I'm an American. Does that make sense?
It does make very well.
You can't put an African American on me. I don't know anything about Africa. Now you're taking away from my Americanism. I'm 100% American bred. You know, so speaking and I started getting I actually became a Republican about 8 years ago. I was speaking at I was joining NAACP. I was vice president. And, you know, I was up in Ferguson when the first big incident happened that went nationwide. And, you know, and I was reading on some things, and I always struggled with some of the philosophies I heard when I was with NAACP from certain people. Great organization, but sometimes some wrong things happen. And so I was sort of fed up at this particular time because I started doing some research myself. And man, I'll never forget, the room got quiet because Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton was there. And I stood up and I said, you know, you guys have failed the black race, both of you. You took the baton from Martin Luther King and you put it in your pockets for selfish gain. Martin Luther King did not fight for the rights of black people. He fought for civil rights of all people. Martin Luther King did not say that Black lives matter. We all know that. He said that all lives matter. Yeah, he brought equality to his marches. That's why you saw blacks, whites, and browns marching with him. He didn't bring division. I said, you guys have failed the black race and you're disgusting to me. Of course, I got a ton of phone calls and my text messages was going crazy. I was vice president for the NAACP. Then I meet this guy at a speaking engagement just like a week before that named Rodney Anderson. And he heard me speak and he said, hey, I loved it. I was talking to the kids, like 500 people. He gives me his card and he's a state rep. And he never told me he was a Republican, right? He gives me his card, man, and we're talking. And we meet up for like 6 months and we're having coffee. This is what's crazy. We learned we're from the same town, Grand Prairie. He grew up on the other side of the tracks, right? Because the tracks divided us. He grew up in the neighborhood. We were born the same year, in the same month, 3 weeks apart. We had no idea. He went to college and I went to prison. We built a relationship, and after 6 months of us hanging out, he never pushed the political affiliations. I asked a lot of questions. And after 6 months, I looked at him, and this is not a political thing, but I talk about politics because I love politics. And I said, Rodney, I think I'm a stinking Republican. He says, I know you are. I said, then why would you not tell me that? He said, because I wanted you to find out for yourself. And so I joined the Republican Party and I started speaking in the Republican Party. They gave me the Minority Engagement Program got started. And so I took over the Minority Engagement Program because I wanted everyone to understand the importance of not just the Republican Party, but to understand the truth about America and sharing, all aspects that I had been learning. So I took that over. I was speaking for that for a couple of years, and I started helping a lot of people run campaigns and do things. And then one day I got a phone call about something that I had talked about in 1996, right? And it was the opportunity to work for the President of the United States of America, President Trump. And when I got the first phone call, the number was weird, and I was like, answered it, and then they're talking to me, my name, like, they said Secret Service, and this is what we're doing. I said, no Secret Service. I hung the phone up. Somebody's playing games. They called back again, Answered the phone. Long story short, in 17, I became the strategic director for the Trump campaign. And so what I dreamed about in 1996 when everybody laughed at me, they stopped laughing in 2017 because I went to the White House and I work for the president and I have Secret Service clearance and White House clearance. So with that, it's not to brag on me, but it's the proof that all things are possible. And then regardless of what you've been through, if you're willing to put those things behind and press forward towards the mark of the prize, you can have it. It was proof for me in America that America's the greatest place on earth. It's the only place. And by the way, I'm the only ex-felon to hold a position of that caliber for the President of the United States in America in the entire history of the United States of America.
Wow, that's huge. That's amazing.
No one's ever done that before. I was the first one, the last one. There may be more to come, but I'm the only one that's ever done that. And Russell, I'm honored to work for the president. I had so many friends, so many people. Oh, you work for President Trump, he's a racist. No, he's not a racist. The thing is that I share with them, I say, you're missing the point here. I'm an ex-felon, crackhead, robber, drug dealer, gang member from the streets, homeless, and now I work for the President of the United States of America. I am proof that there's nothing in America that you can't become if you make the decision that that's what you want. But Russell, it wasn't easy, and I tell people I spent years preparing for that moment.
That's right. Your preparation is impressive. I want to make a point that let's go back to something you were on that's super important in this very moment that we live in. You said that after research and seeking and study, you decided, hey, I am a Republican. But I want to challenge people that are listening, and you can underscore this. When you really seek out what's true for liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
Which it didn't always say that. You know that, right?
Well, no.
It used to say something different. It used to say something different.
Don't rabbit trail me. I'm trying to keep this thought. My point
okay, cool. Go.
My point is, if a person in America today that believes in the freedoms that we all agree, and the things that America's built on, our values basically are freedom of religion and loving your neighbor and prospering, then don't look at it like, oh, Democrat or Republican, because there's division is sown into our society. So if you just intentionally, if you just study which party or which candidate or which platform fits your values of freedom and the ability to own land and have your own money,
keep the government out of your business,
take care of your family, and right, like that, you will probably end up landing Republican if you just throw all bias away. Of course. You know, we're not a political show here, really. But I'm just saying that you touched on that, and I want to just kind of underscore it. And that is that if you don't look at the labels, go a little deeper. It's like the label Republican, Democrat, or Jesus, or Christian. Yeah. You know, those superficial labels have been so misconstrued and distorted. It's like a chaos has hit our country.
And when people hear it, it turns them away.
Yes. So what's the smart thing to do is look at the candidate that you're thinking about voting for, what they're actually saying their platform is, right? Not even their personality or their affiliation, and vote with what is going to line up with what you want to see the world look like.
Period. And I do that every time. The Constitution does not say we the party, it says we the people. And when we move into a position of leadership, though I operate as a Republican, I have to make decisions for the people. You know, so I understand when I get into office, when I do run and I do get into office, I won't just get into office and be biased and say I'm only going to make decisions for Republicans and the Democrats or the liberals don't matter. No, all people matter. And we're in America, and we should embrace the differences of one another rather than repelling them. I want to know why you think the way you think, why you feel the way you feel. And I've turned more people from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party than probably everyone in the state of Texas, literally, because I want them to know the truth about who we are and what we're about. Does that make sense? It does. And even on the Republican side, I tell a lot of my friends, quit criticizing. When criticism begins, your influence ends. So you got to decide what's more important, your point or the person. Because if I don't criticize you, but I embrace your difference and I show compassion to your difference, then at that point I can come in and educate you on who I am, what I'm about. We'll find some core values that line up together, and I could win. Abraham Lincoln said, I never have to worry about my enemy once I've made him my friend.
That's a good one.
See, election integrity is big right now, but I'm pushing integrity of character. Sure, we need election integrity, but we need some integrity of character. We need to quit fighting. You saw the post I dropped the other day. I quit gangs. And then I get in the Republican Party and I feel like I'm in a bigger gang, an educated gang. I don't like you because you're blue and you don't like me because I'm red. Do you know how immature that is? That is childish and it's immature. We have to step up as leaders. Okay, you're the Democratic Party and Republican Party, that's fine. But we need to make a solid decision to benefit the people. We have the oldest constitution in the entire world, 233-year-old constitution, Russell. Most countries change their constitution every 17 years. There's the oldest, there's the Bible, and then there's the Constitution. Are you with me? And the Constitution came out of the Bible. That's the importance of staying on that. But I'm in politics now. I'm not even in politics, man. I like to get away from that. I'm in leadership. It's a place for me to be able to have leadership. It created an opportunity when I worked for the president. It created an opportunity for me to sit on the board of the Department of Energy for reentry programs. I have a voice to help allocate funds and different programs that work, that don't work. You know, I sit on the board of trustees for the wardens to be able to oversee some of that, you know, help with reentry in the state of Texas. So, you know, God has a way of taking those things that were wrong and making them right. So again, I'm not a politician. I'm just a leader. And I love everyone. I don't care what your political affiliation is. It doesn't matter. You can't offend me by who you are. You can't offend me by what you do. I've done everything you could possibly do. Wrong, that is, right? And so...
And some right.
And a whole lot of right. I do a lot of right now, you know. My goal is every day to do something good or to do something right, because it's good doesn't make it God, but I want to do something right every single day, you know. And I enjoy life now, you know. I tell people all the time, I've been rich and poor, and rich is better. I'm unapologetic about that. You know, I like to have a good quality of life.
Yes, yes. Well, I know you have several successful businesses now.
I am an entrepreneur. Yes, I do.
Speak at major rallies and engagements, and you have a lot of influence in your speaking engagements as a leader, and it's a beautiful thing.
It's a blessing.
You are on social media. Everybody can find you. Keenan L. Williams on the social
Keenan
platforms.
Williams, motivational speaker, something like that. Yeah, okay. I think that's what it is.
Anything else you want? We're almost out of time. Anything? Now, normally on my show, I ask everybody at the end of the show, like, what do you think about God? So I'll ask you that, but we've already, you know, we've been flying in that river all afternoon here. So
you know what I tell guys now? That's real, Russell, because people say, well, what, you know, explain this, explain that. God can never be explained. He can only be experienced. I had to experience God. Nobody could explain God to me. I had to experience him. So my ministry, my approach is so different. God cannot be, what can be explained can be managed. And what can be managed can be put in the box until you decide to open it. Are you with me?
Yeah, that's profound.
You can't do God that way.
The scripture that says that is the things of the Spirit are spiritually discerned.
God can only
cannot
be
be understood by the carnal mind.
He can only be experienced. Yes. So I want to lead people into that experience with God, because when you do, it changes everything in your life. Your perspective changes.
And you know, a lot of times it's really just a matter of what you did in prison and what I did at my janitor's apartment in South Dallas.
Yeah.
It's simply surrendering and inviting God into your life.
Amen.
And usually that's the pivotal moment of change. So we've got a couple of minutes left. It's been so good to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keenan. Remember, everybody, I've got my book that's available on Amazon and everywhere else. You must buy this book. It's a must read, because a lot of you guys don't read the Bible, but if you read this book, it'll help you understand the Bible and have an experience with God. Keenan's got a lot of product. Keenan's got a lot of things for sale too. And it's been so good having you today. And it's one of those things.
I didn't bring my book. You didn't
time is a reality.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
It's like this linear thing. And
yeah.
It's been beautiful hearing your story and getting to know it deeper than I knew previously. And it's just good to see the polish that the Creator has put on you as a being. And your story is amazing. It's inspirational. And it reminds me of my story quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because I was a wild man too.
Right.
You know, you were a wild man in a different arena than I was, but you were a passionate and alive wild man. And then God just got a hold of you and set you in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's beautiful to see.
Yeah. You know, he said Moses was the angriest man, but when he met God, became the meekest. Mm-hmm. And meek is just power under control. We're still who we are. We still have our personalities. God has never wanted to change that. We just do different things now.
Yes. Well, I can tell you this. There's some great things coming up in the future that Keenan has told me about, and we'll get you back on the show, and we'll make a lot of announcements.
I'll bring the book the next time, because I do have my book, yes.
A lot of announcements on social media and such will be coming out. You've got a lot of great speaking things coming up, and business and all kinds of secret things that are going to be revealed soon. So thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Check out Keenan L. Williams on his socials, and we'll see you on the next show.